Hey there everybody, I am Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and you are about to watch an exciting 72nd episode of the weekly Ratchet. You know what? I've got a board game here for us to play. I've learned how to play it, and I can teach it to you right now. Let's go ahead. You know what? Never mind. Let's just do something else right here on the weekly Ratchet. Hey there, folks, and welcome back to the Weekly Ratchet. How you doing? I hope you've had a good week of getting to play some games with family and or friends. I'll explain this little opening joke here in a little bit. Hey, welcome to the show. First, a little bit of bad news, sad news, maybe just funny news, I guess, depending on how you want to look at things, is this is actually the second time I have filmed this entire episode. I had the idea yesterday when I sat down to film this. I was going to try and use out the new camera, and I was going to try and draw the same color out of this scene, the boxes in front of me and everything that you got to see in the Beasts in Diplomacy video. I was playing with that new camera, and I thought I had figured out how to get some good lighting and good color out of it, especially, and it looks absolutely terrible. I can't use the footage, so I'm redoing it. But that's okay, and I'll explain here in a little bit. There's actually one game that I got to play again just last night, and I think I have even a little bit more clarity in how I want to talk about it. Anyways, enough about all of that. I am still trying out some new things here with my Canon that you're seeing me through right now. I recorded all this footage looking like this, and I have figured out how to sort of play with things and hopefully get it looking nice like this. If it doesn't look great, I apologize. Bear with me for one more episode so I don't have to record this again. And if nothing else, I'll go back to the way things have looked for the past year and a half in the next episode. Anyways, enough about all that. Again, let's talk about board games. I have been still trying to get down through the GenCon haul. I haven't gotten to play as much this week. I actually spent this weekend looking at houses, because we know there's a move coming up. It's probably not until next year, but we're trying to keep our eyes open as the market just continues to go bonkers, insane, crazy. So yeah, that's kind of taken up a little bit of my oxygen for this past week. But I have gotten some games played. I haven't gotten any new games in, so we'll skip the new games segment. We'll go ahead and jump right into Question of the Week. Why don't we do that now? Okay, question of the week. First off, top of this bit, I want to thank everyone who wished my wife a happy birthday last week. She was really happy to get to see all of that. I did finally give her the premium, the collector's edition of the Redwood board game. She was pretty excited to see that. I also managed to get a card from the Dice Tower signed by everyone there at the Dice Tower while I was at GenCon. So she was kind of happy to see that too. We had a nice time going up to Harrisburg and Baltimore and just kind of, celebrating with some family, with some of her colleagues who she's never gotten to meet before. Anyways, it was a great week. Thanks again for the kind messages. All right, last week I asked you if you would play more board games if you had the ability to play against a virtual opponent, whether an AI, whether in an app or something like that. Now, a lot of folks kind of looked at this from the perspective of using the app to play the game completely. I was kind of more leaning in the direction of a physical copy of the game that then you could use some sort of, again, a virtual opponent. Even like a augmented reality or something like that would be really cool, I think, to be able to play against. But that's okay. We'll still get through these comments. Up first is CR Poll with the shortest ever answer to Question of the Week, as he simply said, yes. And that's it. I respect that. Sounds good. Then we've got Wonderflonium, who said he'd generally be interested in an app that would speed up a solo gameplay experience, but added that sometimes running through the process of the solo analog can be soothing for him. That was an interesting perspective. I hadn't really thought about that. I can say that for me, that's not typically the case. I kind of like an AI opponent that I can just, real quick, make a movement, maybe roll a die, do something, and be done with it. I don't like to manage the AI so much as I like to be focused on my own turn, but I can understand that, and I think that was a pretty unique perspective. Teshera said he absolutely would play games against an AI opponent, as he has a couple games that are more competitive or aggressive, and his wife doesn't enjoy playing them. He mentioned the game Root, which he's been playing on the app against the AI, but also mentioned that he'd still prefer playing a physical game over an app anytime. I think that's a really good point. Myself, obviously I have a collection of games that my wife doesn't like to play. And so, yeah, if I could just get a chance to play them a little bit more against an AI, that makes a lot of sense. I do like the perspective of, being able to sort of practice a game. And I think we'll see that come up here in the comments as well. In fact, Zen Banana Slug said she would be happy to have an AI opponent, that she often plays games on Board Game Arena and would be happy to play against an AI just to help her learn the game before going up against human opponents. Exactly. I think that's kind of the perspective even that I'm thinking of, is that, and I've talked about it before, I think in some other episodes, that sometimes I just come up against a game that I cannot understand. I can't figure out. I can't really wrap my head around it. I play against people and just get absolutely clobbered, and it's kind of frustrating. But it would be nice to be able to just practice that game. I do like what some games are doing nowadays. We're seeing this out of some of the David Turczi games. The Star Trek Captain's Chair, as a matter of fact, has this option where you literally just play on your own. There's no AI. There's nothing you're doing. You're just trying to get a high score, taking every turn on your own. I think that's kind of interesting. I think it can help with that. I still have, with that particular game, it's just like the setup and trying to remember how to play it, that it has just kind of kept me away from it. But again, I think that's a good use of playing in that type of environment. Tony Lawhorn said the best part of gaming is the people around the table. And while he'd love to play games more often, an AI opponent will never replace the table talk and fun with actual players. Can't argue with that in the slightest. That makes perfect sense. Tony and I kind of know each other. He's a very social person, which is fantastic. Has a ton of friends, also fantastic. And I think you're absolutely right. I think, if it's just a matter of, hey, I just want to play a game, versus, hey, I want to spend time with my friends and I want to have that experience to some extent, maybe even where the game is sort of second place of the reason that you're really there for. I can certainly appreciate that. Jeremy Brooks said he plays a lot on Board Game Arena and has gotten the hang of playing digitally. He also added that he loses games quite a bit, so losing to an AI would be par for the course anyways. I get it. Maybe we should play more games a little more often now. I think Jeremy's comment there is in regards specifically to playing on an app, which is certainly fine. I find, especially like with a phone, I just can't really grasp the game, right? And I do still prefer that tactile experience of picking things up. I have found for me personally that I really I can survey a board far better than I can an app. I've even tried playing Spirit Island on a tablet like this, where you have a larger screen and you can kind of look around. It still just doesn't work for me as well as having that physical layout in front of me that I can appreciate and sort of analyze and pick apart and figure out my moves. I can win Spirit Island even solo on the physical table. I cannot win it on the app, and I just do not know why. Viper86, a first-time poster, said he doesn't have as many people to play games with, and so he's even gone as far as finding solo variants for games like Twilight Imperium 4th Edition, and would be happy to have an app to help make those games easier to play. Viper also mentioned that he knows my buddy Matt Ball up in Fredericksburg, which means you probably live a little close. And I'm wondering if you know about the RiverCon convention coming up here in Richmond in November. 2-day gaming event. It's not really a convention. There's no panels. There's no vendors. It's just a big open room of playing games. And if you're interested, go and check out the tabletop events page for RiverCon. That's RIVIRCON. And maybe we can get a chance to play something there. Solo TI4. I cannot even imagine. I should say I'm not surprised that there's a solo variant out there for everything there is for TI4, but man, I couldn't imagine that. But you raise a good point, and I've talked about this before here in the channel. It's BGR4ME or something like that. It's the website where you can go and play solo adaptations of these games. You use the physical copy in front of you. That website, which is just a website, not an app, replicates the moves for the AI opponent. And I've mentioned this before, the Arc Nova, the Arno bot for the game Arc Nova is absolutely fantastic on that web applet, because it takes all of that micromanagement, chucking dice and referring to charts and figuring out what the AI does, takes care of all of that for you. Just click a couple buttons. It tells you where to move the score markers, maybe pull a couple cards off the board. Super, super fast, snappy turns for that Arno bot off of that website. So I can appreciate that. Absolutely. And thanks for posting. Welcome to the channel. That's it. Actually, that's all the answers to question of the week. And I think I've kind of covered my thoughts on this as I went through those. I think still for me, I'm sort of with Tony in the fact that I just really enjoy the conversation, the camaraderie. Again, you'll kind of see a little comment on that opening quip come up here in a moment. And I think that's why no matter how much I've told myself, I want to play more solo games, I want to get more into solo gaming, it just never quite happens. I think just coming over here by myself in the quiet and playing a game is almost too detached. I still want, my wife or daughters kind of around me. I want to be in the company of my family. And so just kind of coming here and just trying to do that, I don't know, it's just, it doesn't click for me as much as I feel like it should. You would think the peace and quiet would just be fantastic, but I don't know. It doesn't work. Anyways, that's it for question of the week. Let me tell you about some games I've played recently. All right, so here the benefit of recording this for a second time is going to work out in my favor, hopefully, because I talked about a couple of these games way too long in that last take. The first one that we played is Sea Salt and Paper, and I played this specifically with the extra pepper expansion, which is a little bag. I had to tear it open. I can't show it here on screen anymore. But we have the extra salt expansion, which I think came out last year. The game itself came out at around GenCon 2022, and then extra pepper was at GenCon this past year. And my wife and daughter and I went to the Center of the Universe Brewing Company we like to hang out at and played this game. It was the first time my daughter had ever played it. And it was a little difficult. She was even sitting there. She was like, I don't understand this. I don't really want to play this. But I said, let's just get a round or two in and it'll kind of click. But it is just a weird game. This is an entirely card game, as you can tell. And in fact, what's kind of funny is that you can see how much lid lift, perhaps, I have on this box because all the expansions immediately outgrew the box itself, which is a little annoying. Can you imagine a big box edition for a card game? Anyway, it's a funky game though, because you're drafting these cards and you have two different ways to score. You can score by putting a duo on the table in front of you. That's typically two cards of the same type, boats or fish or crabs. But then you start to get some extra combos that were introduced by the expansion. In the original game, you've got a swimmer and a shark. But then that starts to get replaced. Now you've got a jellyfish that can blend in with one of the shark or the swimmer. I can't even recall. There's a lobster that factors into one of those duos now. And there's also, I believe, a starfish, which you can just add to a duo to get an extra point. Each duo is only worth 1 point. And so right away with these expansions, it kind of adds this element of, okay, wait, what does this card do again? You got to have all your kind of player aids laid out in front of you, which are just more cards. So they're kind of haphazardly placed all over the table or being slid around. Let me see that one again. And it's a little clunky in that regards. There's also these, a basic set collection aspect of scoring. There are penguins, anchors, seashells, and octopi, and you can collect them. And your first one might not be worth any points, but if you get 2 of them, then that group is worth 1 point, or 3 or 5 or 7, 9, whatever. The more of them you manage to collect. They did add, I believe, in the extra pepper expansion, a wild card that you can sort of add to any one of those sets to act as one of the cards of that set, and that's pretty nice. The big thing that the extra pepper expansion adds is these event cards that sit out. It's a separate deck of cards, a unique back to the cards. And each round, one of those cards sits out there, and it changes the rules for that round. So, for example, if you play 2 crabs in the base game as a duo for 1 point on the table in front of you, you can hold your cards in your hand. They still count as the score, but they don't take effect unless you play them on the table, and it's only those duos that you can play, which, again, is a little funky to try and explain and teach. But if you play 2 crabs, you get to go through one of the 2 discard piles and pick a card out of it. You have to pick the pile first, and then you can take any card out of it that you want. But there's an event card that came out that said, okay, in this round, if you play 2 crabs, you can pick a card from both discard piles, which is pretty nice, seemed pretty powerful. But then at the end of the round, which I'll cover in just a second, you're going to see who's winning or losing at that point, who has the highest or lowest score. And the event's going to have a little plus or a minus symbol in a trophy. And whoever, if it's a plus symbol, whoever has the most score takes that card. If it's a minus symbol, whoever's the lowest score takes that card. And then that card acts as a boon or a buff for that player until either the game ends or they would take another event card. You can only have one of them in play at any given time. And so that was kind of neat. In that particular card, whoever had the lowest score at the end of that round got to take that card in front of them, and now that card only applies to them for, again, the rest of the game or until another event card comes out. And that was kind of neat. It was kind of interesting to, right now I really like having that event, but oh man, now my daughter just took it and she has that, and now none of us get it. And it's, now I don't like it when that gets played, And so that was kind of neat. I liked the way that worked. The way that the scoring works, though, is just really, really wonky, and it's really hard to teach because at the end of your turn, you basically have three options. Option one is just do nothing, my turn's over, next player. Or you can choose to end the round in two different ways. You can just say, hey, we're done. I'm just going to say that we're done. And everyone plays all their cards. You count the scores for the duos, for the set collection, like I mentioned. You can also have these mermaid cards. The mermaid cards will give you a point for every color of card that you have the most of. But if you have multiple mermaids, then you have to count your most populous color, second populous color, etc. If you have 4 mermaids, by the way, in your hand, you immediately win the game. Just immediately, no more rounds, game is over. I've done that once in a 2-player game against my wife. But so you're going to play your cards, you're going to calculate all your scores, you add it to your total, and I think it's first like 100 or 120, whatever it is, maybe it's 80, I don't remember, wins the game. Or you can choose to sort of like gamble. Still ending the round, but you're going to tell the other players at the table, you all get one more turn. I'm done. You all get one more turn. And at the end of that round, you all play your cards, you calculate your scores, and if you have the highest, then you get to score all of your points. Everyone else only gets to score their color bonus, getting a point for every card that they had the most colors of, or every color they had the most cards of. I keep getting that wrong. Basically scores like a mermaid even if you don't have a mermaid, and that's all the score that they get. In the last round of our game, I just, this story was kind of fun. I had a couple duos in front of me. I had a couple of cards in my hand. I had some octopi, I had one mermaid, and then I had another card that was nothing. And I thought, I've got like 10, 12 points in front of me. I think I have a shot at this. And I said, one more, the last call or last chance, whatever it is. My wife kind of looks at me, she's like, are you serious? Really? Seriously? She takes her turn. Didn't really have a good turn. My daughter plays another shark swimmer combo, which lets you steal a card from your opponent. She pegs me for like the 3rd time in this game. She kept stealing my mermaids, and it was ticking me off, and she just blindly draw. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got 4 cards. 3 of them are going to give me this win, I think. Only one of these cards is useless. And I was like, son of a... So I shuffled the deck, my little hand of 4 cards, and she draws the one card I didn't need. She had a 75% chance of wrecking my game. She drew the one card I didn't need. I dropped the rest. I had the most points. I scored, my round. They all just got a couple of points that put me over the threshold. I won the game. And my daughter was like, dang it. And that was a neat ending. It was that kind of like climax ending because I felt like I just wasn't doing great the whole game. I think I was last place going into that last round. Only by a few points, though. Scores were still pretty tight, which is kind of impressive given how kind of wonky the scoring is. Anyways, I've still talked too long about this game. It's an interesting game. My 12-year-old daughter was just barely able to get her head around it. I mean, she was winning after a couple of rounds. So she did okay. Sea salt and pepper, extra salt, extra pepper expansions. Okay, up next. Try and do this without making a mess. There we go. We got to play Tenpenny Parks, just my wife and I, 2-player game, using both the new expansions. I love Tenpenny Parks, one of my favorite games. I know I talked about it not too long ago. My wife and I just kind of played the base game before GenCon. I got these expansions. These are prototypes from Thunderworks Games. I picked them up at GenCon, and I will be doing a full-length video here at some point for these. Now, real quick, the holiday one, this is Winter Lights and Spooky Nights. It adds some Christmas-themed amusements and some Halloween-themed amusements. You basically add one card into each of the original decks in the original box for each of the themes. You have a space theme, you have a Western theme, you have a maybe a Mars or a lava theme. I can't quite remember. An underwater theme, like an Atlantis kind of a thing. And so you're going to take one card out of each of those themed decks, which each deck only has a couple cards in it. You're going to add one card either for the Christmas or Halloween. I always do that. That's a problem of mine for years. Christmas or Halloween, or you can do both. You can replace 2 cards from the original decks with 1 card from each of these holiday expansions, and then you're going to sort of play with that for the rest of the game. So the Winter Lights adds a little track along the top, a little strand of Christmas lights anytime that you place a ride of that Christmas theme, or some of the meeples on your board, the trees that you have to kind of work around in the base game. Some of those trees get replaced with a screen printed Christmas tree. These things are absolutely delightful looking. I love Christmas trees. And anytime you place any ride next to one of those trees, you'll get to go up the track. There's a couple different ways you get to go up this track. Mostly it just gives you a couple of rewards, maybe a few points, maybe a few bucks. Even later in the game, it's really not that helpful. The rewards don't seem to stack that well until like maybe the last 2 spaces. They suddenly kind of get to be juicy. But what's interesting with the Christmas theme is that some of those spaces will actually require you to give one of your opponents a gift. You pick one of the 3 tracks that you're climbing in the base game: awe, excitement, and thrill, if I remember, something like that. And you get to pick one of those 3 tracks that one of your opponents can move up. And that was kind of it was a neat theming. Like, I get it. It's Christmas. The idea being that you're giving someone a gift. You're, of course, going to pick the one that they're usually trailing on. So it doesn't help them too much. That's how we do things in gaming. But I still thought that was pretty neat. The Halloween adds these little ghost meeples. They have a reward on the bottom, on their butt. You're putting them out onto various cards. I believe you might even be putting them out onto your board, if I recall. And when they get placed, you then get to look at the bottom of that meeple and gain a reward very similar to the Christmas ones, although there's no gifting. You're just, maybe getting a couple points, maybe getting a little bit of money, maybe getting to advance one of those tracks, etc. This one was just nice, very cute. I did love the Christmas theming. We did not try the Halloween. We didn't want to throw too much stuff out there in one play, but I'll check this out again using the Halloween mode. Innovation, however, is the big expansion. This adds another board that sits underneath the main board, sort of integrates in with the original board of the base game, and it gives you this track that you'll go up. You add a little token for each player. They're even really nice screen printed little components. And then each round of a 5-round game, you're going to move up that track one time. You have to do that action before the round ends. You can only do it once in each round. And then there's this idea that the first player who makes that advancement gets the biggest bonus. The second player gets a slightly weaker bonus. And then the third or fourth player basically kind of get worst of the draw, if you will. So the first space that you land on gives you like a special ability, kind of like an upgrade to your park. The first player gets to look at 3 of those cards, pick one, take the other 2 out of the game. Second player gets to look at 2 of them, pick one. Third and fourth player just get to draw 1 card, and that's all that they get. And they're pretty game breaking. They kind of, they'll usually give you like some extra end game scoring, some other sort of thing to work towards throughout the game. And it's nice that it gives you that in round 1. You can work towards it in the entire game. The second round, you're going to get a specialist who works in your park and lets you break some sort of a rule throughout play. Mine was quite juicy. I actually got the ability, so in the base game, you're putting out these polyomino tiles that represent these different amusements, but they use sort of blockus rules. They cannot touch each other. They can't share an edge with any other piece. They can only come together at the corners or not come together at all. You can basically put them anywhere on your board that you want to. But of course, your best bet is to try and get them to touch on the corners just barely, so you can kind of wedge as much stuff into your relatively small play area that you get. But I had a specialist that said once per round, so I can only do it 4 more times in the game, because this came out in round 2. I could break that rule. I could put them so that they are touching the sides of 1 or more existing tiles in my park. And that was huge, man. I got some really big plays in with that. The third movement up that track gives you a new expansion tile, kind of sits along the side of your park. They have some sort of unique rules, unique twists to them. The fourth movement just lets you advance on those tracks. The first player goes up all 3, second player only goes up 2 of them, third and fourth player only goes up 1 track. And then the last space is really the juicy one, and there is no difference as to when you go there. It simply says when you move into that final space on the final round of the game, you can build any of the existing amusements that are out for sale you can build them in your park for free. You still have to follow all the placement rules, but you can just put it anywhere in the park that you want. And you don't pay any money for it, I should say. There's no penalty. Like, there's this sort of carnival tent, and it changes the prices as it sort of spins, one of the sort of gimmicks of the game. And you get to ignore that as well. You can just build anything you want. And that was really nice because there is scoring in the base game for how many amusements you get into your park by the end of the game. And I think at 6 or 7, it's 5 or 10 points. And if you manage to get 8, it's like 15 points. It's a big boost. And I have almost never gotten 8 amusements into my park. There's always too many other things you're trying to balance. With that little nudge, it becomes very easy to hit that level of 8. And they obviously know that they kind of built some extra scoring into this because they've added some 10-point scoring tokens that you can collect. And so I did. I had a great game. I had the highest score I've ever had in Tenpenny Parks. I had a ton of fun playing with these expansions, especially Innovation. The Christmas theme was delightful. I just love what they've done with this. It doesn't add any real complex, crazy rules. It was very, very easy to learn how these expansions work and integrate in with the base game. It felt very seamless. Adds a little extra layer of strategy, but not over the top. Just fantastic. Delightful production, as always, of the Tenpenny Parks expansions. Let me get these out of the way. All right, two more to chat about. I'll bring this one back onto the screen. Last week, my buddy Daniel came over to play some games. We were going to play Cloudspire. I actually have sort of a base version of the game. I had learned the rules, which really aren't that complicated. I had the whole game set up on the table. Was kind of trying to just understand how to get the tokens situated. We were going to actually play a cooperative game because we're not very aggressive head-to-head gamers. And we were kind of, when he got there, we were talking about, like, yeah, the game doesn't seem very complicated, but each of the different characters and the little minions that you may have, each kind of have their own sets of rules. And so that is where I think a lot of the complication of that game comes from. It has like a 4-point-something rating in difficulty out of 5 on Board Game Geek. We ended up just sitting there talking. We just chatted for quite a while, almost like 2 hours, at which point we went, there's no way we're going to get to play this game. We're so far into the rabbit hole, we're just never going to get to this. So I kind of threw everything back in the box. I grabbed out Wondrous Creatures, and we gave this game a quick play. Now, I talked about this a couple of episodes ago. I played it with my wife, and we had used all the expansions, and it felt like a very lopsided experience to me. This time, we left all that out. We just played with the base game, and I had a much, much better time with the game. Our score was so tight. At the end of the game, we finished with a 1-point difference with Daniel in the lead. He was very excited for that win, and it was just nice. This is a worker placement game with a sort of tableau of cards you're putting in front of you. It's somewhat similar in overall mechanisms to that of Everdell. The thing with Everdell, though, is that starting off in the game, you're going to be using the workers to get resources, but later in the game, you really need to be using those workers to get you other rewards, other point bonuses, etc. And you feel like you're under such pressure to get a good engine built in Everdell to make it work for you. In Wondrous Creatures, you're pretty much just using those workers to get resources for the entire game. You can maybe snag up an egg, which gives you some extra scoring potential throughout the game. You can maybe snag some extra little things here and there. There is also a captain character. One of your 3 workers is a captain, and they can do something a little bit more powerful for you when you place it, maybe if you get it unlocked. So you're not as pressured to get a good engine going. You're not as pressured to do that, to make that engine work very early for you. There are some cards that maybe later in the game they're just not useful for you in Wondrous Creatures, but generally it's a nicely paced game. It does feel a little slow at the beginning. You're getting stuff out. You're constantly placing out workers to try and get the resources. Some of the cards are kind of expensive to get played. That's not really a big deal, but you just feel like you're kind of dragging. In fact, I had something like 14 points before Daniel got more than maybe 2, but he did rapidly catch up to me, built a pretty good engine, and then, like I said, he actually won the end game by 1 point. So I had a really good time with this. I really enjoyed it. It felt a little bit more streamlined without the expansions. I kind of feel like those expansions are a little geared towards the full player count, especially as some of them have bonuses for placing your workers next to workers of other players or interacting with other players, which means at 2, there's just less opportunity for that to really work for you. So I have to think that maybe at 2-player count base game is maybe where you want to stick with. Save the expansions for higher player counts. Beautiful production, great looking game, Wondrous Creatures. Okay, last game to chat about here. I think in the last recording I did yesterday, I talked about this game for a good 15 minutes. It's going to have a lot of spoilers too, so I want you to be warned about that because I'm going to talk to you about Vantage. I have played this game a couple of times now at solo count. I did play it last night, still at solo, but my wife sort of just sat there and watched me play. I kind of had her help jacking some dice and reading some entries, kind of getting involved in the play of it, but still played it as a single player game. I'm going to experiment with something here in this video that I'm going to flash the word spoiler on the screen if I'm talking about something that I think is quite a spoiler to the game, and then you can just kind of mute until you see that disappear, and then you can turn the mute off if you don't want to hear anything, you know, detailed about the game. It's a little difficult to talk about this without any kind of a spoiler because very, very quickly in the game, even in just your setup, you pick a unique mission, you sort of pick your character, or you randomly get assigned your character. You then sort of get a random spawn location on this planet. I think there's maybe 20 different starting locations, give or take. You roll, well, let me see, it would be 6 times 6, or 36, I guess, give or take, starting locations, because you're going to roll these 2 D6 dice that have different symbols on them instead of numbers. And then you're going to match up those symbols, and that tells you where you're starting at. And then very quickly from there, you're going wherever you want to go. There are 1,700 locations in this game. There's 800 something cards, and they are 2-sided. Only a couple of the cards are just 1-sided. There are then 800, 900 cards that you're collecting and putting into a 3x3 grid in front of you. You can actually expand beyond that 3x3 grid, but only that 3x3 grid is active. Any other cards that you get kind of sit in your reserve, and you can exchange them out, but you have to spend boost. I'm not really going to get into that in this playthrough. The whole game is just about sort of exploring, kind of wandering around, figuring out what you can do, where you can do it at. You do get a mission at the beginning of the game. You can get a destiny as you're playing the game. You can even get additional side quests. It feels very Skyrim-ish. It feels quite a bit No Man's Sky-ish to video games, of course, that are, you know, big open world, immersive sort of RPG experiences. But there's, I think, a real significant difference between both of those, all of these games, is that, you know, in a video game, if I walk 20 steps in a certain direction, chances are pretty good I'm still in a pretty similar area. And especially like No Man's Sky, I may come over a horizon and I see a building. Oh, I can go check out that building. And I've probably seen a building like it before. I probably know what species of people are in that building. I may find a weapon that I can grab, or something kind of small that I can sort of advance myself with, but it's not going to be a huge different experience, right? You're not going to suddenly just find yourself in a completely different environment or something that is completely foreign to you until you go somewhere very far, right? When you sort of decide, okay, I'm going to leave this planet and go to another planet, or I'm going to leave this town and go to another town in Skyrim. You can play an awful lot of time in more or less the same environment. In Vantage, because there's only 1,700 locations, and Jamie Stegmaier, tried to make this huge immersive environment. I mean, he's trying to map out a planet in 1,700 cards or so. That means that when you go from one card to the next, they're usually pretty different. You're suddenly in a very different environment. You don't feel like that town you just left is actually right behind you. And it may not be. You may find that I leave this card, the cards have a compass on them, and it says, okay, if you're on card 512, if you want to go east, you just go to 513, which might even just mean flipping the card over. But it may say, well, you're going to go from 512 to 712. Okay. Then you get to 712, and it says, well, if you go west, you're going to go to 612. Like, well, wait a minute. What happened to 512? How did I go from here to one card east, and then I don't get to go back to that same card west? it seems really odd. And I found a couple examples, especially even just last night, where the flow of this map just did not make sense to me. Especially if the game says, hey, you need to go northwest. Well, there's no northwest. There's north or there's west, which then you kind of go, okay, do I just go up and over? Until you realize that if you sort of cheat and you kind of back up, and let me just lay out these cards. If you go north and then west, or west and then north, you can actually end up in two different cards. They might be close to each other. They might have very similar numbers. Maybe you can even find a way to get from the northwest card to the west-north card, with a little bit of work. But it just, I cannot understand the map of this game. And I can't determine, as I was chatting with my wife about it last night, is it actually a map? Can I just go north, 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 and wind up in the same place every time? Or is it actually kind of a maze? Do I actually have to navigate, north and then east and then north again and west and then south? I've done a loop, but I may actually end up in a different location than if I had just gone north from a previous card. And I can't seem to find consistency in the way that I move around this map. And it's frustrating because you get these missions. Here's a quick little spoiler. I had a mission that said go and find towers. Yeah, you're activating these towers to send a signal to your home planet, something like that. And I had found one, and it even gave me a map. And it said, okay, you can look at this map to find out where all the other towers are. But it doesn't tell you where you are. It just says, here's a map of this massive planet, all organized by sort of regions, A through M, I think. And it sort of gives you a little pin to show you where each of those towers are. But I have no idea where I am. And so I actually played a game, one of the games I played recently in the past week, where again I kind of finished the game. I couldn't get anything done. I've never accomplished a mission in this game. I've never accomplished. Actually, I did. I accomplished one mission, but I was nowhere near getting the Destiny done. And if you get them both done, it's like a super win, something like that. And so I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm done playing. I'm going to just cheat. I'm not going to read the text on the cards. I'm not really going to explore the cards, but I want to just try and figure out this map. I want to see if I can figure out how to get to one of the things that I had found a reference to. And I'm trying to do this a little bit without spoilers. And I just kept drawing cards. I kept basically reading that compass. Okay, I'm going to head north to 713. I wasn't rolling dice anymore. I wasn't dealing with any of that stuff. I'm just going to pull out the next card. Okay, from here I want to try and go west. I pull out the next card. Sometimes you got to reference a book. Sometimes that travel is a little bit more complicated. It doesn't just give you a direct number that you can go to. You have to refer to a book. And it says, okay, if you want to go west from this card, here's what you have to do. And then it tells you which card to go to next. So I had cards all over the table. I finally kind of managed to figure out where I was in this region based on a map that I had looked at in one of the 7 or 8 books that come in this game. I kind of got an idea of where I was, and I kind of had an idea of where I needed to get to. What I couldn't figure out was the scale of each card. The map actually kind of gave you little landmarks, just kind of colored in, very vague, not super detailed. And so you kind of have to just keep going in the same direction and try and figure out the landmarks from this map. Okay, I see that building. I'm going to go over here. Oh, okay, here's that big giant tree, I'm assuming. So it's like maybe 5 cards across, maybe 7 cards across is an entire region. Okay, got it. Now I'm trying to figure out the same thing from north to south. So I kind of figured out, I think this is the column of cards I need to be in to get to this place I need to go to. And I tried going south, and all of a sudden I was at a landmark that was below where I thought I wanted to get to. All right, well, let me try and go north. Well, then all of a sudden I was at the end of the region, and I still had not found this place that I was trying to get to. And so again, I'm just flipping through all these cards. I'm trying to figure out, do I go south and around? Do I sort of loop? What do I do? Is there maybe a different action I need to take to actually find this thing? Maybe I can't just move there. Maybe I have to take an action at a certain location to then trigger that next location. There is this idea that this map is somewhat 3-dimensional. You can swim on the surface of the water, or you can dive and go underwater and find different things, but you're actually still in the same location. And I won't get into super details on that, but that blew my mind yesterday. But I finally managed to find this location. It took me probably 20 minutes of literally just cheating through these cards, like ignoring the actual rules of the gameplay. Now, again, I wasn't reading the actions. I wasn't reading the story. I was literally just looking at card art and trying to navigate to where I wanted to go. And I was sitting there thinking, even then, I couldn't do it again. I could not readily now tell you when I find this again later in the game, oh, I need to go to that card and head west, and that'll do it. Because I already can't remember. But it was so difficult to just say, I want to go to this place, and I think I'm here, and I'm going to head west, and maybe north or south. Boom, there it is. It just wasn't that simple. And I can't figure out if it's actually a maze, and you have to find the right way. But then here's the thing. Every movement that you're doing, every action that you're taking, everything that you're doing in this game is a challenge. You roll a set of dice. The books will tell you how many dice to roll. You get a miss symbol, which is actually the best symbol you can get. It just means nothing happens. That die goes away. You get a setback symbol, which is kind of like the second best thing that can happen. It means that die sort of goes back into a pool, but it doesn't really hurt you. And then you get the other three symbols, which is morale, time, and health. And if you cannot mitigate those dice values, then they punish you. They go to a penalty box on the board that's in front of all the players, and you move down on these tracks, which only go up to 6. You move down on these tracks for every one of those symbols that you can't mitigate. You mitigate those symbols by putting them on cards in your 3x3 grid. So your character card, this isn't a spoiler, your character card may say, okay, well, based on the color of your character, there's sort of 6 skills in the game. Your character is immediately sort of adept at one of those skills. And you have a place where if you're attempting a challenge of that skill type, you can always put a die on the corner of that character card. Every character has this. Again, this isn't really a spoiler. It's just based on the color of your character and the color of the action you want to take. That die will then sit there until the pool of dice runs out, or you would attempt a challenge that requires more dice than you have left in that pool. I have 3 dice in the pool. This is a challenge of 5. I have to first pull everything off of the cards, which could be yours and other players if you're playing at multiple players. And you sort of start with a clean slate. And that's ideal, because now when you're going to chuck all those dice, hopefully you've got a lot of place to socket them so you don't have to suffer the penalties of those dice. But again, they only go up to 6. Those tracks only go to 6. You can only take at maximum, 6 health damage, and then you're dead. And when you're rolling 6 dice, and maybe you're rolling 6 dice when all of your cards are already covered, you roll 4 hearts. That's 4 health that you have to take a hit on because you have nowhere to put those dice. You can't do anything about it. There's no further mitigation. And I had one of my recent playthroughs where I just kept rolling the time symbol. And I just ran out of time right away. Now, you can stay in the game, and I won't get into specifics on that. But you can stay in the game. You can also just cheat your ass off and stay in the game over and over and over and over again. You can just, I'm just going to re-roll, because you can pay to re-roll. I was out of that resource. So again, especially a solo play, you can kind of play it however you want. If you just want to explore and play the game, you can do that. It's your copy of the game, do whatever you want, right? But I realized that as I was kind of faking my way around this map, I would probably be dead long before I got to where I was supposed to go. I was going to run out of something, morale, time, health, whatever. I was not actually going to get the mission done. And that was just one place I had to go. I had to go and find another one of these things at some point to actually accomplish that mission. I was like, there's no way I'd ever get that done. So last night, my wife and I were playing a game, and there's a lot of caveats to this I won't go into. I just wanted to show her how it worked. So I didn't really play optimally. I started off on the game. Immediately we came across a quest. Our mission was to actually just accomplish a quest. That was all we had to do, which should be pretty easy, right? So I got a quest, very, very first turn of the game. I was like, oh, fantastic. Let's figure out this quest together. Let's solve this. Well, it required a lot of underwater exploration. There's going to be a little spoilers in this. I'm going to try and kind of keep it vague. But, okay, well, I don't like swimming underwater. Obviously, you're swimming underwater, so you're going to have maybe cold damage or what they call hypoxia damage and other things you got to deal with. I probably would not have normally tackled this if I was playing it on my own. I don't even like being underwater in real life. I don't really like doing it in games, especially a game like this where you just don't know what it's going to throw at you. But whatever. Let's try it because we're here. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to keep her attention. Let's just give it a shot. And so it says go northwest. Okay, well, we tried a north and a west. Actually, I think we tried a west and a north. And we found something. Oh, Well, that was easy. Let's go in. So we go in. Okay, well, that was a challenge. Okay, we're in. Now what? Well, that was a place you could do every action on the card. Typically, you can only do one action on every card, every location in the game, which is kind of frustrating. I think that's how Jamie has tried to keep each play of it very unique. You go to a location, well, hey, last time I did this, but now I want to try and see what this does. That's okay. But if the last time you were at that location it gave you something really, really good, you're going to want to do that again. You're not going to be as incentivized to try out other things. Anyways, I digress. We tried every single action on that card. That card actually let you do that. It said right on the card, you can do any action here that you want. We tried every action, didn't find anything even remotely close to solving this quest. A little frustrated already. I mean, we had already just vaporized all of our, I think our health and our time was almost out. It had maybe even run out already. And we were just kind of getting, let's just re-roll that. Or, we're not going to worry about it. We couldn't find it. So, okay, well, let's try going a little further northwest. Immediately, we found ourselves in some bad environment. We draw a card that basically says, the first time you go here, you just get jettisoned across the map. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. I'm trying to find this thing. I don't want to deal with that. And you don't have the advantage like a video game of being able to actually look over there and going, I don't think I want to walk over there. You just kind of get thrown into something and you can't mitigate it like you possibly could in a video game. So we just control Z. Nah, never mind. Let's go back here, let's try something else. Try to go another location. Nothing. Try to go back the other direction. Nothing. Could not. And again, by this point, we had quit playing by the rules. We were just pulling out cards and trying to figure something out. Could not figure out where this quest was supposed to happen. I have no idea how far northwest I was supposed to go, given a little bit of clues that were on this mission. I don't think I could have gone very far. It was underwater. We moved a couple extra spaces and found ourselves on a shoreline. So I figured, well, obviously, it's not further in this direction. We're coming out of the water. So it was very frustrating because I was trying to show my wife this game. I wanted her to kind of appreciate what it could do. And I think that in that instance, in that playthrough, she sort of saw the worst that it could do. She saw the most difficult that it could be, the most frustrating that it could be. We came nowhere near to getting anything done. We were dead almost immediately. And we actually had some decent rolls. Like we had some, good luck with it to some extent. But and again, if I was playing this on my own, it was okay. I have an idea of where I need to be. I'm going to try and strengthen myself up so I can survive underwater a little better. But again, it's so difficult to get back to where you were because going north doesn't mean you can just go south again to go back to where you were. And again, you may come across these cards that just sort of jettison you somewhere else. And you're like, well, crap, now I have no idea where I'm at. There's no, marker location like a real-time strategy or an RPG game that says, go this direction, and you'll be there when you get there. It's so hard to navigate this map. It's so hard to then try and accomplish these missions, try to get to where you want to go, try to go to where you think you need to go, and you have no idea if you're on the right path or not. And it's just frustrating for the simple aspect of the map and how diverse each card can be, to then go, oh, no, wait, I don't want to be here. I want to go back. Oh, wait, I can't go back. Or all of a sudden I'm flung across the map and I have no idea what direction I need to move in. So I don't know. I like what it does. I like the idea of what it's trying to do. I should say that. I like, this idea of I was playing it and I came across a piece of my old ship that I had crash landed on. I decided, let's just tear it apart. And I found this big, massive power armor suit. And I was like, oh, yeah, man. Hell yeah, I want a power armor suit. It gives you extra place to put dice. It gives you some extra abilities. You're immune to certain things. That's fantastic. Maybe I could even find it again on a future play. In fact, I think we ran across that when we were trying to do the mission last night. I was like, oh, I know what this is, actually. But that's fun. But just the challenge of exploring, the sheer, seemingly simple task of I just want to walk in that direction. I just want to go northwest for a couple of minutes until I find something that looks like where I need to be, only then to find out maybe that's not where you need to be. How much further do I need to go? Where am I going to get thrown to? I don't know. It just... I'm going to keep trying it. I do think what I want to do is, I feel like this is a game that you need to just do what I've been doing. You need to kind of like, I know what, I'm just going to goof off with the movement. I'm going to just sort of try to understand how to navigate this. Maybe that'll then make the whole game a little more approachable. You also need to kind of understand somehow, and I don't know how, don't get me wrong, what is maybe the right action to take? What can I kind of infer from this little bit of card art, one-word descriptions of actions? What am I actually able to do this location? I see a couple of trees, I see some plants, and it says gather. Am I gathering the plants? Am I gathering up some maybe critters I can kind of see in the artwork? Like, you don't know. And I realize that that's kind of part of the mystery. You know, I'm going to ask. What am I going to ask? Who am I going to ask? I have no idea. And then all of a sudden, I've got some really cool stuff that maybe I wouldn't have gotten had I just left. But I don't understand the game yet, and I think I need to keep trying to just understand what was Jamie's idea. What was he kind of trying to kind of coax us to do? And I feel like if I can kind of unlock maybe the algorithm, the map that he sort of conjured up to make all this work, if you can kind of piece that together in your head, then maybe the game might become just so much more approachable, and I can actually have fun exploring, trying to find things, coming across random encounters, random events. I'm just not there yet, and I don't know if I will be. I honestly don't know. I'm still curious about it, but my past couple of playthroughs haven't really been great because I've tried to just figure that out, and I've ended up dead. That is Vantage. And if you got through all that, I appreciate it. If you're still with me, thank you very much. That is the end of the episode. However, let's chat about question of the week next week. Now, I did a bunch of filming this past weekend. I have a Crafting the Cosmos review that should be ready. I'm doing the Ratchet here again. And I have a top 10 that I've actually already recorded. I just need to edit it. And as I was kind of thinking about how I was going to present this, I kind of came across a little hurdle. And I've come across this before. So you're actually going to help me with a little bit of market research. The question of the week is, do you like seeing the games of a top 10 video listed in the video's description, or do you prefer to be a bit surprised by actually watching the video? The last couple times I've done these, I've sort of experimented with just going, here's the timestamps for number 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 1, as opposed to, here's my number 10, Tenpenny Parks, here's my number 9, Cloudspire, whatever. Because then you don't even need to watch the video, technically, right? You can just sort of read the description and move on. I don't know how many people do that. I have no idea. And so I'm just kind of curious, what would you prefer to see? And I would kind of go with whatever gets the most popular outcome. How about that? Anyways, that's it for Question of the Week. That's it for episode number 72. Thank you for watching. Thanks for the first-time posters. I am going to try and get the subscriber number of this channel moving again because it has been quite a bit stagnant lately. But we'll see how that goes. Thanks again. I'll see you soon. Cheers.